Okay, so let's get started with the agenda. So for those of you watching the VOD, I just spent maybe 15-20 minutes doing nothing but warming up a little bit, preparing for the episode. So I'm going to proceed with the agenda. Welcome back. I know for a fact that I didn't really introduce myself during the previous two episodes. I just go by my internet nickname, Odious Repeater. My blog is odiousrepeater.wordpress.com. You can find out a little bit more about me in the blog and read my stuff and so on. So, how do you do? Sorry for the lack of manners previously. Also, a word to you who found this through YouTube. Maybe you've watched one of the other episodes before. Just a quick comment there. I'm continuously, polishing the videos and stuff, and one of the latest things that I've added was a table of contents with links in the description and so on and so forth. So, if you were watching the previous VODs but you found it a little bit too long-winded and you didn't really know how to skip between sections and you didn't have time to spend, the full length of the videos, then obviously maybe check them out again and use the table of contents to navigate between sections. I'm going to be adding sections to this new video after the fact as well. So yeah, welcome to episode 3. So just to recap what we've done in episodes 1 and 2, we've killed the first 2 bosses in the game, and now we're about to kind of follow up on what happens after beating boss number 2, which is Father Gascoigne, and we get access to the Cathedral ward, and we're going to take it from there. First of all, I wanted to talk about one of the sub-quests, if you can call them that kind of came with this second boss fight. So you might remember that in my frantic attempts to actually survive this fight against Father Gascoigne, I actually had to use this tiny music box. And the small music box received from a young Yarnham girl hides secrets. If you press the display button, which is square, it says a small music box received from a young Yarnham girl plays a song shared by her mother and father. Inside the lid is a small scrap of paper, perhaps an old message. 2 names could be made out, however faintly, Viola and Gascoigne. And, Viola I found dead, probably at the hands of Gascoigne, the father. It's quite tragic stuff. But another thing that happened is, after I found Viola, I found this red jeweled brooch. And yeah, it says here it's a woman's bright red brooch engraved with the name Viola. Perhaps the jewel is a gift from a hunter used to change into a droplet blood gem that fortifies any weapon. With the proper workshop tool, various weapons can be fortified. So, yeah, this brings us to our first topic of today. Excuse me for a second. I have to cough real quick. Sorry. So, this brings us to the topic of choices. What choice does this brooch thing represent? You see that I can actually use it, right? I can use it to get one of those blood gems, and you use blood gems at a later point in the game to actually fortify the weapon. However, if I go to this girl who gave me the music box and talk to her real quick, still can't find my mom. So hand over the red jeweled brooch or do not give. These are my 2 options. So I'm guessing if I choose do not give, then I can always change my mind and give it back later. But this presents me with a choice. If I use what I have right now, I know what I get for it. So I get the upgrade reagent and I can strengthen my weapon, which is a really cool thing. But if I don't, if I just hand this over, then I don't have that option anymore. I can hope that I get something in return, but, let's just start by handing it over because we don't hate children, do we? So, hand it over. Sorry, mommy's dead. Very sad, obviously. We're going to speak to them again just in case. Not saying anything yet. Now, what just happened here? Well, I made the choice, and it was a moral choice. But is it enough for something in a game like this to be a moral choice? Arguably not. I mean, part of the charm of these games for the really hardcore fans is the whole concept of, longevity and replayability and trying out different things and whatever. So it can't just be a moral choice, even if those can be interesting in some games. But that's not really the focus of this game. But what kind of choice was it? Well, I'd argue that it was a reasonably poorly designed, uninformed choice situation. But again, this makes perfect sense within the fiction that they're trying to portray here. They're not going to tell you everything. They tell you what you would get up front if you were to keep the brooch for yourself, but they don't tell you what, if anything, you get for giving it back to the little girl. But, since they give you a choice in the matter, it's not just a binary, go to the window and have the thing taken from you, then obviously there's meant to be something to that choice. Now, I'm pretty sure that, doing this, handing it over, is going to lead to a separate quest line later that I couldn't really access without handing over the brooch. But yeah, that's not really communicated, right? So let's talk about choices just in general, what kind of choices we have. First of all, we have exclusive choices. I believe that I just made an exclusive choice. And an exclusive choice is a good choice because it puts you in a situation where you have to weigh options against each other, which is, strategy to a large extent. And even if you're not playing for those kinds of reasons, you don't think in terms of strategies and, what's the best course of action from a utilitarian point of view. Even if it's just a moral choice or something, the question you pose to yourself is, what kind of character do I want to play as? How do I want to role play? So an exclusive choice is one where you choose something over something else, but you can never choose both. A non-exclusive choice those are kind of meh, right? So, like, if it's just a question of what to do in which order, it's not really the most interesting thing. Though it can be spiced up a little bit. You can always take a non-exclusive choice and spice it up a little bit by having the game remember which order you did things in and having certain things be made a little bit different because of that. So that kind of makes it a bit of an exclusive choice, but maybe not in the sense that you want, and not nearly in the same way as a completely exclusive one. And then you have clearly, false choices. False choices are basically the ones where, it's presented to you like there is a choice in the matter, but there's actually a right and a wrong way to play the game. Like, if giving the kid this brooch had no effect whatsoever except to rob me of the reagent that I would get if I were to use it, then that's a false choice, because giving it over to the kid is the bad way to play the game. It's just dumb. You just should not do that. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say about choices. And obviously there are times and places for all of them. I'd say that exclusive choices are the best ones for the reasons I mentioned. Sometimes the less exclusive ones are there just to make players feel a little bit more empowered and, like they have an impact, even though it's not a massive impact. You see that a lot of story-driven games with, branching plot lines that don't really branch in any meaningful way, but you get to kind of choose something, and then sometimes you get to go backwards in dialogue trees, so it's just a question of what you want to do first. And yeah, I think you kind of get the idea. Excuse me. So I need to get back to a lamp. So what is the quickest way for me to get to a lamp? Oh. Thinking maybe starting by killing these guys. Go. One thing I like to do in these kinds of games, I think it's generally a good idea, is when you have the situation where you're fighting in melee close range with some enemies and someone else is away shooting at you and it becomes a bit difficult to handle multiple opponents at the same time, make sure that you take on the melee guys with something between you and the person shooting, because usually the AI is so rudimentary that what they do is they do something called a raycast from the shooter to the player character, and that the raycast isn't necessarily interrupted by things. So in this instance, it's not actually interrupted because maybe they're actually raycasting to something that it can actually reach. Maybe it's like raycasting to the top of my head or something. So it still thinks that it has a clear shot, but when the shot's fired, it turns out not to. But it keeps shooting. It doesn't actually change its position or anything like that. So just, figure out who's shooting at you and get something between you and them. Okay, let's do the thing with the dashing. There we go. Okay, and we're going back to the hunter stream, and we're going to talk about the next topic there. So, I wanted to talk a bit about the auto-replenishment mechanic that exists in this game. So I think you might remember that I wasn't actually full. I might have been full on blood vials, but I definitely was not full on quicksilver bullets. But if you look at the top left corner of the screen, I have once more 20 blood vials and 20 quicksilver bullets. Now, how did this happen? The answer to that question is pretty simple. There is something over here called the storage, right? I haven't even accessed this yet in this session because reasons. Like, I've not really had to, but I open it up and I look at, so this is still my inventory, right? But I can jump sideways and then, look at what's in the storage. So the storage is basically a replica of my inventory. So it's just a separate container. I don't know that I have any limits to what I can carry on my person. So I think the storage is just for organizational reasons. And by that I mean, of course, I have a limit to how many instances of a given item, but I'm not really sure if I have a limit to the number of item types that I can have. So I think that I can have like an infinite number of weapons, but I can only have a certain number of items that stack on top of each other, like the blood vials and the quicksilver bullets. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about was this auto-replenishment thing. So the blood vials and the bullets in the top left that got added, that were not with me when I first got here, they didn't magically appear. They were actually taken out of storage. So the second I get back to the hunter's dream, I get topped off on the blood vials and the quicksilver bullets, but it's not for free or anything. Now, other types of reagents don't. If I had, say, antidotes, or I don't know, any of these things, right? They wouldn't get automatically replenished. Now, why is that the case? Well, I mean, simply speaking, from a game design point of view, that just complicates things a little bit, because blood vials and bullets operate a little bit outside the realm of normal items. Like, they're kind of unique in that I always have them equipped, whereas pretty much any other item is optional. So the game designer can assume that I'm always going to be carrying those with me. So in order to kind of cut back on tedium, because it just becomes a ritual, right? We're back to choice. It's not an interesting choice whether you should go back to storage and pick up more blood vials and quicksilver bullets, right? You just should, but it becomes a tedious thing where you have to kind of go back and forth all the time to pick them up. So they just transfer them for free, but they don't do that with other things. Why? Because you may not have them equipped. Even that can be solved, though. I'm a little bit disappointed because with the pebbles, for instance, I think that the second I don't have any pebbles anymore, this actually disappears. This is why there's a gap here. I used to have something here. Forget exactly what it was, but I used to have something here. Maybe Molotov cocktails, and once they ran out, now I have nothing, right? So effectively what happens is when I use the last one up, it becomes unequipped, right? So that's one of the problems with having the auto-replenishment applied to other things than the vials and the bullets, right? But it could be as simple for them, though, is that once I have a given category, so long as it is equipped, it could, in fact, still exist as an icon, as a container. It could just say 0, and when I get back to the hunter's dream, they could actually add them back up again. I guess there are systems that you could think up excuse me, that yeah, that could work. So yeah. Um, but regardless of how it works, I still think this is a system where you should be given feedback. And right now that doesn't happen. And because I've been playing a bit of Souls and I'm used to the Estus flasks there, for the longest time I had no actual idea that vials and bullets were not for free. And at one point I came back to the Hunter's Dream and I had less than the maximum amount because I gotten to a point where I was using up more blood vials than I was collecting. And I didn't really understand what was going on, and that's when I kind of figured it out. So there's no real feedback. In general, they're not really that good with UI, UX details. For instance, I mentioned before about this thing with when you have too much of something, usually quicksilver bullets, because not everyone actually uses bullets very well. So when people run out of the... No, actually, they don't run out of the bullets. The other way around. They run out of free space to store bullets in, both for their character and for the storage. You get this really cumbersome and big, thick message that says, unfortunately, you can't put any more bullets away because your storage is full, and it's a big menu, and you have to click OK to remove it. And once you're maxed out and enemies keep dropping these bullets, you're going to keep seeing this over and over again, and that could have been done much smoother. So anyway, let's see about channeling blood echoes. How many do I need? Well, I think I might be able to level up twice, actually. I'm actually going to keep leveling up strength now because it feels like the right thing to do in light of the choice that I made for which weapon I'm going to be using in the future. And I have some blood echoes left, but that's okay. So yeah, finding worth in the waking world. Yeah, I guess another thing to mention is that we are now playing on patch 1.03, I believe, the one with the new loading screens and the new loading times, which makes this all a bit of a breeze. I think Digital Foundry made a test on the loading times, and there's still some places, some parts that are going to take quite a while to load in, but generally respawning is done that much faster, and that's the stuff that matters most. Once you've decided on an area, you're probably going to stay there and die over and over again rather than jump around. And that's kind of cool. So here we go. We're back here, and we just killed Father Gascoigne, and we're going to move up in the world. So on the topic of loading times, I'm going to put out a question first and see if I can wake the chat up. I know there's just a handful of you, but I wanted to put out a question and see if I can get someone to think of something clever. What would you say are the practical, and should I say, balancing implications of long loading times, and also of loading times varying from one place to another? So I'm just going to put that out there. I'll answer the question in a bit, but I just thought I'd let someone who was feeling like chatting actually answering. Don't be shy, just type something in. Sorry, we are in this creepy study. Oh boy. The Bergenworth spider hides all manner of rituals and keeps our lost master from us. A terrible shame. It makes my head shudder uncontrollably. Very good. I saw there was just a comment in chat. I'm going to check it out in a minute, but I'm going to open this chest first. What are we going to find in here? And we search the chest. Blood Gem Workshop Tool. Isn't that special? So we do the sub quest where we get the brooch that would have turned into a blood gem, and immediately afterwards we actually get the workshop tool that allows us to modify our weapons with blood gems. Funny how that works. Okay, so I'm gonna check out the chat real quick on my laptop. Yeah. Fatal Exception 1. Personally, I like putting tutorial messages on loading screens, but then it's kind of bad practice to not do that. Yeah, very much so. I think in this game, for whatever reason, they felt like talking more about lore was in the game's best interest for some reason. But yeah, it's kind of common practice, I'd argue, to go for tutorials and useful information of that nature. Go cutscene. Go. So we're in the Cathedral ward. This is a scary, creepy place. And oh, look, there's that guy over there. God. I mean, I understand that he's not a looker or anything like that, but he's not being aggressive, He's not biting at my ankles or anything. And when my girlfriend Sarah first got here, she went full Cartman. She was just like poking him with the stick. Like, I had to try to grab her and say, "No, don't kill everything you see." She was like, "No, but he's so creepy." But he's not really that bad. You talk to him, and he notices that I'm a hunter.
Very sorry. The inn's not good.
Yes, just been waiting for one of my ilk.
Everyone waiting for it to end. But it won't end
Seems
nicely.
nice.
Not this time. Screams of women folk. This Yarnham's done for. But if you spot anyone with their wits about them, tell them about this era. They'll be safe here.
So.
The word. If you would.
So Auto-Replenishment Chapel is a safe place. I do recall someone earlier in the game asking me to let them know if I'd found a safe place. So I should probably go back to them at some point and tell them, "Hey, I found this chapel place. It's safe, I guess."
I know I shouldn't be. If you happen upon if they seem worth. Oh, and I'll do some.
Yeah, but this guy seems nice, I suppose. Okay, so let's get back to the question that I asked before about loading times. So, what's the deal with loading times anyway, and why was I talking about balancing at the same time? So we're not going to do a really massive deep dive into game balancing, but one of the things you have to know about balancing in general and creating like an experience where you have a lot of interesting and thus exclusive but still interesting choices is that you need to consider pretty much everything as a resource, and that's something that a lot of people miss about doing balancing, is they only think of it in the numerical sense, and they only consider the in-game parameters to be factors, like what my damage output is, and how much damage I can sustain, and so on. One thing to consider in your balancing and in trying to create the right pacing for your game is you need to think about technical considerations, and loading times are one of those things that will really affect gameplay. And I think even more so than this game, I could use Skyrim as an example. So Skyrim is a game that also suffers from absolutely hideous loading times on console. And if you're playing on console, or if you have a PC that's a bit slow in loading stuff in, you're going to start seeing how it actually affects your play behavior, because in a game like Skyrim there is so much movement back and forth. So there we go, I'm going to light this lamp. So there's so much movement back and forth between different places, and you go to some dungeon and you kill a bunch of enemies and you grab all their stuff and you want to go and sell it to a merchant, but you can only carry so much. So you're hopping back and forth between the dungeon and the place where you're kind of selling stuff, so the vendor, right? And obviously if you do that a whole lot, you're going to make choices to accommodate this. Now, is that such a bad thing? Well, people get to make up their own minds, but I'd argue it's not very good. Because, for instance, in Skyrim, I found myself only ever fast traveling to those towns that they had vendors that were outdoors. See, if there was a vendor that was indoors, I knew that I'd have to go through another door, which is a portal, which causes loading to happen, right? So that affected how I played. And again, with Skyrim, another one to mention is this whole thing with UI. If your UI is extremely cumbersome, but only when you're doing certain types of things. You're going to start doing less of those things. So one of the best things about the Elder Scrolls games um, combat system and their whole RPG system and the way levels work and all this other nice stuff and classes and what have you. The cool thing about that is those games make it actually really interesting to multi-class and to create your own interesting stats and skill combinations and but multi-classing in the true sense of the word, including changing from stealth to backstabbing to two-handed sword to shooting lasers from your fingers with the normal console non-modded UI. You had to engage in so much clicking, so much forced pausing of the game, and so many stupid button presses that that whole class combination became constrained not just by balancing in-game aspects, but also by what the implications were and how many extra clicks you had to engage in just to play in that way, right? So this comes back to the whole thing with making sure that your players are kind of playing towards the intended fiction and the intended aesthetic. Well, if you have serious UI and loading problems, you're going to create a play behavior that may not match the aesthetic. Like when I was playing Skyrim, I realized very quickly that the most useful or the most practical class to play was a lightly armored dual-wielding barbarian with lots of carrying power. That's it. That was the least cumbersome way of playing that game. So of course you're going to start doing that, especially as it scales. For a 10-hour game, it's not a big deal. But for a 200-hour game with all the DLCs and stuff, it adds up, right? So I'm going to talk to her about Boylan Chapel. Yes. She's on me. She wants me to do stuff. Now that I've spoken to Father Gascoigne, I need to double check with this lady over here and see if she has anything to say. I don't think so, but I don't remember exactly, so I'm just gonna double check. Oh, hello.
What are you still in a home?
Okay, nothing. Right, so much for the loading times and a little bit about UI, but then what about their choice to do the overlays with the lore, right? I mean, why that of all things? Like I mentioned, there are different practices and some are more standard than others. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that it's one of the reasons they have anything at all is because it makes the loading times feel even shorter. So oftentimes if the players perceive something to be in a certain way, then for all intents and purposes it might as well be. It's not just about the absolute length of the loading times, it's about the perceived length of the loading time. So if you can, excessively long loading times are a problem because they bore people, they take them out of the fiction, all the stuff that we know about. So long as you can counteract all the consequences, part of the problem can be solved with just shortening loading times, but there's always going to be a bit of a risk so long as you have more than, maybe 5 seconds, right? So another way of doing it is to make it not feel as long as it actually is, and having lore up there is a good way of doing it. Another thing, though, is that it really helps them in their attempt to communicate their aesthetic, because so much of the story is hidden in these containers and so on, so they just kind of cycle through everything, and you will be exposed to a lot of lore eventually, even if you forget to actually voluntarily look at it in your inventory. Also, one thing that kind of deserves mention is the whole thing with manufacturer guidelines and so-called TRCs and TCRs, as they're called. So these are, console manufacturer quality criteria that you have to kind of respect. So one thing is, whenever the game is saving to disk, the player must be informed, and there's you know, there are best practices. That's why usually there's like this text that says this game uses an auto-save feature, so on and so forth. It's not just to be nice. It's an established practice on the platform holder level. Like in the console manufacturers, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they force you to inform players of these things, and also other types of destructive actions, right? So if there is a risk of you overwriting something by doing it a certain way, then they have to warn you about it, and you know, so on. Another interesting quirk that comes with this, you know, this whole thing with manufacturer guidelines is that the requirement that you show the player that something is loading has actually meant in some games, I don't know if it's still the case anymore, but it's actually meant in some games that had loading times that were too short had to artificially increase the length of their loading time so that the message that the game was loading was, you know, visible for long enough. So they had to have at least like 5 seconds or something. And then there are, you know, other thresholds. So I think the no game is allowed to have more than 1 minute loading times, something like that, on average. So, you know, there are ways of testing it. If a game has more than 5 seconds of loading time, it has to show some sort of graphic. If it has more than 10 seconds, it has to have more interesting graphics, and you know, all kinds of interesting or different interesting thresholds, I suppose you could call them, for what you should and shouldn't do and when and so on. Yeah, so there are rules for that too. Okay, so this loading time was a little bit longer. There we go. So we're back. Okay, so let's have a look around the Cathedral Ward. So creepy guy back there. Oh, here's Granny. Let's see, does she have a reward for me?
I actually think I owe you something. Well, that's a part. This old mess that Yarnham's in. Oh, that's good. Tainted. Don't you come near me.
Okay.
You.
So Granny's not going to give me anything. That's kind of sad. Oh, look, here's a door. Can I open it? It's closed. Just simply says closed. That is probably the absolutely worst thing you can say to someone is, this door is closed. It's, yes, obviously. That's why I'm trying to open it. Okay, new type of enemy. Look at this guy. So he's all big, and he has a big stick. And he packs a bit of a punch, but I can still do the interrupt thing. And that's good. Oh. So, bird. Luckily not that much stronger. So, yeah, obviously I've played this before, so this is my second playthrough, so I kind of know what stuff exists where. But every once in a while I still get surprised by the odd monster. Madman's knowledge, good. Oh, look, there's a guy there. There's a lantern. And a bell. I don't know that he's gonna use the bell for anything. Ow. Okay. So him down, and I'm going to step up, getting up the stairs, and here's one more. Okay. Ow. God, this guy really packs a punch. I really feel like I spent some of my stat points the wrong way. So here's the wooden shield. So apparently they put the shield in kind of almost like a joke, because it's supposed to be really, really bad. So this is a dead end. So I'm gonna have to go back. This is a good time to check the chat. Okay, so the first question here is, what kind of compromises have to be made to cut load times? Fatal exception 1, or oh no, even. I'm guessing it was just optimization. Sometimes you don't get a chance to do these things during development time. Yeah, that's true. And you know what optimization then means, that can be a lot of stuff. So a lot of stuff can go into it. Like it can be something as easy as making the file sizes smaller, and sometimes you can actually do that without actually losing any of their quality. So you can have a good enough compression added to your textures or your audio or whatever to make them take up a lot less space, and so they're easier to kind of to load. I mean, they're quicker to load. Sometimes it's, you know, clever tricks. My understanding is that one of the most, should we say, expensive things in terms of loading time, one of the slowest things, is the continuous opening and closing of many small files. And often a game is actually developed in such a way that it's actually composed of lots and lots of small files. And one way of getting around the problem with, you know, seek times and opening and closing of files and constantly, you know, referencing the table of content and stuff like that on the disk, instead they actually create this archive type system where they have really large files that contain the same data as used to be split up into many small files, and apparently that really speeds things up. So unfortunately I'm not a programmer. There are many other ways, I guess, that could be used. So yeah, this kind of brings us in also the fact that I bumped into this dead end. So first I go into you know, I tried to go through that door before and that didn't work, so I came around here, and you know, here's a dead end. And this is, again, this is their level design at its best. One thing I want to say though is I can understand some people, you know, in spite of this, in spite of the fact that the game is so good at nudging you in the right direction, I can understand that there's a category of player who really wishes there was a map. I know for a fact that my girlfriend was talking about that a lot and asking, you know, why don't they have a map? And I don't think there's any one simple answer to that question. Like, why do they simply choose not to have a map? I think that one reason has to do with what kind of player behavior that they want to get out of the game. Sometimes a map doesn't really help with that, because by looking at a map, if you have a map that's already completed for the player, so the only thing the player has to do is look at the map and automatically know where everything is. You know, even if everything isn't really everything, even if the map doesn't actually show all the interactive objects, you get so much information from the map, and I can imagine some people just not wanting to remove that whole exploration aspect. Then obviously you have these kinds of maps that get populated over time. So like if you want to call it that, a Diablo style map, right? So the Diablo games and many other games have these procedural dungeons, so more or less computer generated dungeons that are a little bit different every time you play the game. Yeah, for those games, of course, you know, you can have that kind of map. And I think you actually have to have it. But it's interesting if you look at what happens in those games. So if you play a Diablo game, I mean, the correct strategy in order to figure out where to go and what to do is to turn the predictability of the map generating algorithm back against the game. So what you're doing is you're going into a new area, and the first thing that you do if you want to try to figure out what's going on in that area and where stuff is that you start hugging the wall and you just run around the outline, right? So you're just running around the wall, the far extreme of the map, and you just go all the way around in circles until you know the perimeter of that zone. And then obviously you're going to have a few tunnels leading out of it to the next area. So, you know, you choose if and when you want to follow them, and then you start zigzagging across the actual map. So that's, you know, it's another thing that doesn't necessarily strike one as obvious as having impact on play behavior in this sense, but it does have an impact on play behavior. Another thing is, you know, how it gets justified in the fiction, and another question is like how is it projected, because in a game like Diablo again, you can simply project it well at the same perspective more or less as the game itself. But let's say I was playing this game and I was also at the same time looking at a top-down map. I'm not really sure I'd be a massive fan of that kind of projection. So here we go. We're gonna grab this thing. Oh, I get a top hat, all kinds of stuff, but I know that something is going to kind of try to grab me if I do that. Now I know what that something is, but I'm not going to spoil it to you people. But yeah, it does freak you out the first time you bump into something that seems to be grabbing you and you have no idea what it is or if it's even alive or what. It's just this like massive ball of light grabbing you somehow. Yeah, part of the fun for this game is learning the map. I actually agree. I think it's a lot of fun to do a lot of exploration. I think that it does put a little bit of pressure on you as a game developer though. By that I mean, you know, it can be made fun, but it can also be made boring as hell, and it can be really confusing if you have environments that are way too samey all the time. So long as you feel that you can have an architecture and texture work and, you know, other things that makes it not feel like you're constantly seeing the same section over and over again, then I think that you can get that feeling from players. But if it's way too samey, and if it's, you know, the exact same thing over and over again, then, you know, players are just going to get confused, right? And I think that's one of the things with Diablo is because of the way the system works with the procedural dungeons, they don't have, you know, hero assets as we sometimes call them, or like landmarks or something like that to get orientated by, right? You know, everything looks a little bit samey, and in that instance, I actually think that it's probably for the best that they have the kind of map system that they have. So let's see if I can actually not die. Wow, he's so close to death. Why do I not use my gun? I should know better. There we go. Okay, more blood vials. Boom, 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 boom. I go up here. Open main gate. Only a special emblem. Yeah, okay, I don't have that special emblem. That's a shame. I wonder where that is. Dum. Yeah, so this is, again, you know, clever level design. We know statistically that generally, I think something like, I don't know, 70% of the time, if you come to a fork in the road like this, the player is going to take a right first. Even more so if the path to the right actually leads up as well. It's just like some psychology that even if we don't understand it as game developers, we can really utilize it. Why would they do that? Well, I go here, I get the information that to come through here I need a special emblem. And, you know, small spoiler alert, if I go down here, I go in the opposite direction, I take a left where I took a right before, I get to the place that I will be able to unlock once I have been up there. So, you know, the whole thing is organized in a pretty clever way. You know, very good level design. I keep saying this, but it's true. They have very good level designers, and they're confident in what they're doing, and they don't always feel the need to be super explicit about everything. This is a really nice view also of Yarnham. I really like this. Okay, let's see if we can pick a fight and not die. Oh, this guy's a big weapon. Owie. Oh, this guy doesn't seem all that impressed by my sword or my gun. There's this thing that they're not really ashamed in the least to have enemies that look kind of samey, but the version that's in the later part of the game is just inexplicably stronger. Looks exactly the same as his friends, but he just packs a bigger punch because they don't want me to go in that direction too easily or something. Just needs one down. Oh boy. Yeah, this is starting to be a bit of a lossy adventure. Lossy in that I think I'm spending more blood vials than I'm earning from these guys. Oh boy. Oh, that was actually kind of lucky. Search corpse. Oh, even the birds are a little bit nastier down here. Yeah, I'm playing a little bit out of order. I'm being a bit a bad boy, but I just wanted to take a quick look at this view. Okay, I think it's pretty awesome. So, yeah. See, I'm not really sure people can tell, but first I'm going to go back here. Monocular, that's cool. That lets me actually zoom in, and I can put the monocular to the, I believe, personal effects. Dun, 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 dun. And with this, I can just kind of look at stuff, and down there is actually the bridge that one can follow to get up here, and then there's supposed to be the other bridge as well. That's the main bridge, so I think, yeah, that's the one that, exactly, right? This is the one that leads back into Yarnham, and this is where I fought the cleric beast over there where I'm looking, right? Whereas, there we go. How do I get out of this? Oh, silly monocular. Yes, okay. And over here is the other bridge that I took going over to fight Father Gascoigne. I really like this. I like the seamlessness and the fact that the world is connected, that you can see from one part to the other and get a sense of orientation. Oh, let's look in here. Is there anything in here worth taking? Oh, no, nothing. Okay, so what's over here? What's in this direction? Yeah, more bloodstone shards. So that's a big guy. This is kind of interesting. I don't recall seeing this guy anywhere else in the game. I think this is the only place that this guy with the giant ball spawns. Over there is one of those little guys that you can kill and who yields like really, really good gems and stuff. I'm not going to get to him this time because if you don't get there quickly enough, then he just kind of disappears, and this guy is definitely going to require my full attention. Oh boy. I really have a feeling that I'm not really supposed to be here just yet. So let's see. Owie. I don't care. Okay. So one of the good things of doing stuff a little bit out of order is, of course, that you sometimes get stronger, better rewards than otherwise. This is a total tease. I feel like I should be able to leap over here and then go back to that bridge over there. Mind you, I think that the version of this bridge that I see over there is simply not the same as the one that I would see if I were actually on it. I think it's a very low version, low LOD version. Or far LOD version. Yeah, see, none of the details exist, and yeah. So I don't even know if they're all part of the same level really, or there's been some swapping of game logic and stuff. Like they probably have a lot of really clever stuff happening in the background to make it look like a seamless world, but in fact it might not be. Boom, 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 boom. So I come here. This place is a little bit creepy. And I go down here. So this, apparently this is the place that was sealed, right? So this is where I'm supposed to go later, I think. Right, so this is the door that's closed, right? So I think this would actually bring me out to the bridge, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, and here we go. A tempering blood gemstone, isn't that nice? I think I should probably put that on my weapon. Yeah, so that's that. I have a little feeling that I might be missing something here, but no, maybe that's all there was to it. Okay, so back onto the path. I think I was mistaken actually. I thought this was the way to go later, but actually this is just a dead end for now. I'm a bit confused. I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure it'll get clear later. Okay, so back onto the critical path. So, yeah, if I've gone in this direction, like I obviously have, I will now know, where a couple of locked doors are or locked directions, and I can always come back later and look them up. It's kind of standard fare. I think it was actually part of the grand list of role-playing game cliches that the key to the locked door in front of you is always the next one over. So you're first introduced to the locked door, and only after that are you introduced to the key, which makes perfect sense. Well, it's a little bit like that. Oftentimes they'll actually show you a lot of dead ends, and you have to kind of bump into the dead ends before they show you the intended direction. And that has the advantage of kind of etching into your mind that there was a dead end before, and maybe you should come back there later. And then once you've bumped into all the dead ends, they actually expose you to the direction you're actually supposed to go. Yes. I need to get better at that. Sneaking mechanic's kind of interesting in this game. So it does have a bit of a sneaking mechanic, and the sneaking mechanic is actually quite simple. It's just it actually uses analog controls, and you can just elect to walk at one of two speeds. And if you walk as opposed to run, then you can actually sneak up on enemies. But if you run, then they'll notice you. That's basically it. Wow, I took a lot of damage. Blood vials, cool. Yeah, a lot of games have kind of decided not to have full analog controls. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that some of the time it's actually pretty nice to have, some of the time not so much. I mean, I think that having fully analog control is actually more problematic the more gameplay implications it actually has. So in this game you actually have walking, then you push a little bit further and you go into a running state, so it doesn't use the full range of motion, and using the full range of motion is difficult for a number of reasons, but also it's not always a good idea from a player perspective. You don't always want that range of motion. But this game actually has the two speeds, and then on top of that there's the dash, and I have to hold on a button to dash. So if anyone has any idea about why that would be, just write that in the chat. Happy to hear your theories. I suppose in 10 seconds I'll give you the answer. Any ideas? Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. Number one, it's because it uses stamina, obviously, so they want to make sure that there are no false positives there, and it becomes all the more difficult because if they would have added it to the analog stick and not required me to hold down circle, then it would be a lot easier for me to make the mistake to dash when I didn't really want to dash. And, you know, with 3 speeds, it's already a lot of granularity for an analog stick. Most people actually keep the analog stick pressed full tilt all the time. So even having, you know, 2 tiers of movement speed is a little bit ambitious. Now, let's see. I'm going to look over here. I'm going to sneak around the corner and see if I find the guy. No, the guy's not there. That's really good. Okay, so there's a guy who goes around, and we might as well call him Sackboy. And I hate that guy, and I will tell you why when he kills me, because he will find me and he will kill me. He is Liam Neeson. Actually, the game kind of spawns him every once in a while in really mean places because, well, he's meant to kill me, and that's all there is to that. I'm sure there's some achievement connected to never being killed by that guy, but I don't think I'm gonna get it. Okay, so I go up here, I see a guy with a gun, and then wolves come, and oh boy, that's a total ambush. I actually took a hit unnecessarily. This is actually more difficult than it looks. Getting shot at by someone while trying to not get killed by dogs is tough. Okay, oof. Yeah. See, they increase the difficulty of enemies in such a sneaky fashion. The dogs just look the same, like the one I used to one-shot, but now they take like 3 hits instead of 1. And do a lot more damage too. Yeah, for more on that, just go back to episode 2 and listen to me talk about content tiers. Okay, here we go. Let's open this baby up. And dum 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 dum. Okay, so here's one path and here's another. I'm going to go into this one because I need to see someone. Here we go. This is kind of interesting. So over there is a person. You might not see that clearly, but take my word for it. And everything about this approach was made for me to kind of trust the guy and feel more at ease and less likely to want to stab him in the back. Because he does have his back turned towards me, and I'm pretty sure that I could, if not kill him outright, do a lot of damage. And, you know, still have that option. Yeah, it's like it's bright, it's shiny, he's clearly preying. You'd have to be a bit of a monster to stab him in the back. Anyway, he's so blonde and nice looking. Anyway, hello, Alfred, Hunter of Blood. So, yeah, I can cooperate or refuse, but obviously I want to cooperate with the guy.
Take this to celebrate.
Got fire paper to celebrate our acquaintance, and now I can pray. I wonder if I can actually do something with the prayer.
May the good blood
May the
guide your
good
way.
blood guide your way. So the good blood. That begs the question, is there bad blood? Must be rules for us to share. So I can choose conversation topics. So I guess these are just lore containers. This is just for the sake of lore, but you never know with these things. Maybe if you ask him about everything, at some point he's going to actually give you a reward. Because the game doesn't tell you this kind of stuff, you just click everything that you can, and I think I mentioned that before. And sometimes they're dicks about it. You choose to have a conversation about something that just turns the guy hostile or something like that.
Of the Cathedral ward. If you seek blood healing,
Yeah,
the church
and he
is
keeps
within.
reiterating what I was told before, just visit the church, visit the church.
Bergenworth is an old place of learning.
Bergenworth, interesting.
The tomb of the gods. Well,
I don't even know why my character knows anything about Bergenworth. I did read about the Bergenworth spider, but that's the first I've ever heard of it.
College lies deep within it, and furthermore,
No, I think I knew about it even before, because I think I asked the guy behind the window about Bergenworth. So
I
I
bid you
leave.
farewell. It has been a pleasure.
Guy looks a
May
bit
the
creepy,
good blood guide.
but he has seriously cool sideburns. Okay, so here we go. Now let's check this first door. Oh. This is kind of interesting. So I pull this. and something happens. Now, if I were to not pay attention, I might actually miss that. I know of several people who just pull levers and they just immediately go away. And then they wonder, hey, what did that lever do? Well, next time, stand still. Anyway, search body, madman's knowledge, cool. And now this opens, so this is a bit creepy. I'm gonna go down, and I'm gonna try not to get killed. Is there anything in here? Hello? Don't quite recall. Oh, looks nice enough. It's like a cathedral inside a cathedral. Oh, another gemstone. I need to put gemstones in my weapon. These are so weird. These statues. But that seems quite intentional. They're meant to be weird. They're meant to be a little bit, I don't know, distressing. And this looks like a slightly different type of iconography from some of the stuff that we've seen before. You know, there's this continuous, should we say, insinuation by the game that there are at least 2, if not more, sets of books. You have, you know, whatever the church and the authorities tell people, and then you have, you know, different layers of, you know, increasingly disturbing religiosity and social structure as you progress. It's a little bit like some Lovecraftian take on Scientology or something. You know, some of these guys are like Thetan level, whatever the hell. Oh, here comes the wolf. I think I need to kill this guy. I'm not sure. I have to say the blunderbuss does do a lot more damage than pistol, but I do struggle with it sometimes. Okay. In part because I sometimes don't really feel like I get the timing right for the you know, the parry / visceral attack. Anyway, go down here. And what do I find? Oh, look, there's something over there. Can I get there? I'm sure I can, but I think I have to jump. No! Okay, at least I didn't die. Oh, or I could just walk, I guess. Yeah, it's not quite as cool, but it works. Okay, so this is kind of creepy. And hello, what is this place? Oh, I love lamp. Lamp is really cool. Let's do some exploring. There we go. Huh. I don't know, this is kind of conspicuous. I feel like there should be something here, but oh, here we go. I did something. Pungent blood cocktail. Alright then, let's light that lamp. And hey, what's that over there? Inspect, huh? This town is long abandoned. Hunters not wanted here. Okay. Now, UI in the bottom of the screen changed to open door instead of inspect. First time around, I didn't actually notice that. I just thought that I didn't actually know that this was supposed to be something interactive beyond that warning. I didn't really know what to make of it. So I just went back. I went back and explored other parts, and I did not know that this would actually lead to something. It was only because I found it weird that there was, you know, even a lamp here that I even came back in the first place. But this can be solved really easily by just having a more advanced user interface, right? You could basically say, you know, what it said, but you could still have a second prompt that says, you know, ignore warning, yes or no, or open door, yes or no. You could just have everything in the same prompt and not have it split up over 2, because not everyone actually notices those kinds of switches. Yeah, so we're going to open the door real quick and see that this in front of us is old Yarnham. Yes, old Yarnham. But old Yarnham is the topic of next episode. So yeah, I'm going to go back to the Hunter's Dream, and I'm going to put bloodstones into my weapons, or whatever they're called, and open up. If there are any final questions before I sign out, just you guys go ahead, let me know, and yeah, I'll try to answer them. Oh, that guy. What do you want now?
The moon is close.
What is close?
Beneath the beasts loom large, and threat as every hunter before you. A holy where hunters partake in.
That sounds creepy. Okay, so workshop. Blood gem fortification. Fortify weapons using blood gems. Blood gems imbue weapons with special characteristics. Interesting thing about the upgrade system. So I can put in these two. So yeah, the bottom left of the interface, you have a number. So this is 1, and then it says radial, and that's the shape of it. So what kind of slot it fits into, because you know, different weapons have different slots. If you look in the middle of the screen-ish, you'll see that I have 3 slots, but only one is, you know, proper lit. The other 2 are kind of grayed and darkened out. So they will unlock later as I upgrade my weapon. So I'm going to start by putting a gemstone in here. And these are kind of at the same level, and they're called the same thing, but they're more or less randomized in their statistics. So one is going to increase my physical attack by 0.07. And the other one is by 1.1, and HP continues to recover +1. So this second one is just objectively better. It's one of those false choice situations. Yeah. Let's see about fortifying the weapon itself. For just 8 of the shards, I can actually upgrade it. Now, this is actually, the saw cleaver has actually gotten upgraded to the point where I need a new type. Now I need the twin bloodstone shards, and I think I mentioned this before in the previous episode. I can also upgrade the blunderbuss. Right now I don't. Yeah, I think I need to upgrade it once, and it's gonna actually get a gem. Interesting thing, I can't actually infuse my gun yet. But even if I could, I can't really use the same kinds of gemstones as otherwise. See, now I've got the second one here, so I'm going to put the other one in there because I only have the 2. But yeah, so with the gun, they have a different kind of gemstone altogether. Why would they have different kinds of gemstones, and why would the slots look different? Basically for balancing reasons, you know, different categories of gemstone do different things. There are some categories that are simply never allowed, like you have the different blood-tinged gemstones or whatever, the ones that are just for guns, right? Because the status effects and the improvements and the upgrades that make sense for guns will not necessarily make any sense for melee weapons, and vice versa. So that's why you have that. Yeah, so there we go. So before signing off, we're going to do quick leveling up. So what do? I'm going to do strength, I think. I don't know if I'm going to do strength twice. I haven't the heart to. I need some more vitality, I think, because I'm just not very strong. Okay. Not sure if this would ruin the purpose of the stream, but I'm wondering what you would consider the best and worst with Bloodborne from a game designer's perspective, from Civilot. Wow. Great question. I think that the worst, let's start with that. The worst with Bloodborne is usability still. And I realize that this is a bit of a controversial thing to say, I suppose. But I think that usability could be a lot better. Just simple stuff like the menu, the UI, the UX, the accessibility must be possible to improve these things a little bit. Now, I'm not going to nitpick. It's not that any of it is absolutely horrendous. It's just that there are so many small things that could be better. With that said, of course, it's a massive improvement over Souls, but it's still not quite where it needs to be. I think there are other games that have slightly better UI, and I think that it might make some sense for the developers of this game to look at that. Other bad things, I don't know. I really, really like the game, so there's not really that much, in my opinion, that is bad about it. I think that it's both good and bad, that there are some things that are kind of opaque and not really easy to understand. I just wish that the things that were not easy to understand were things within the fiction. Sometimes the things that are difficult to understand with this game are actually, usability things that if they were to explain them better to me, that wouldn't ruin my experience. It would actually make it better. Whereas other things like the story, I'd rather they not explain it to me because it's not as interesting if I'm just told what it is. What do I think is best about the game? It's just like a more of a high level philosophical thing that they are so absolutely positively ruthless in certain ways with their design. Like it's just so non-compromising. I was actually interviewing a Japanese game designer one time, and we ended up not really working together because it was just like not a very good fit. But he did say some really interesting stuff, and I don't know if he was in any way representative of Japanese game developers, but he did say a really clever thing. I actually asked him like if he had any best practices, if he had any mantras that he lived by, and that kind of stuff. And he said yes, I have one rule in my game designing, and it's called edge. Wow, okay, edge, what does that mean? Well, he said edge is when you're in a situation where you have two dinner guests. You have, a man and a woman or whatever, and the man says, I want red wine. And the woman says, no, I feel like white wine. The worst thing to do at that point is to offer them rosé, right? What you want to do is you want to make a decision and stick with it, because if you try to always balance on the middle, there's this chance that you create something that is so bland that it's just inoffensive, and maybe you're lucky and you get a hit just by virtue of being at the right place in the right time, but you are much more likely to try to find a niche audience and just pamper to them, like really cater to them, just pamper them, and just do something that is really uncompromising in its niche status. And this game does that. This game has so much edge, and some of it actually I think creates a bit of game design splash damage, because I think some of the problems with the usability and this stuff actually stems from that. These guys are just absolutely non-compromising. They're probably arrogant as hell. They're sitting in their offices smoking cigarettes and talking about what geniuses they are, and quite possibly really arrogant dicks, most of them. But there's good and bad that comes with that. And one of the good things is that this game has its own identity, even though it's very similar to the same developers' other franchise, the Dark Souls games. They're so good at defining their title and what the edge of the title is and the identity of the title and whatever, and just sticking to that even between this game and Souls, I have a lot of perceived differences. I feel like they're really different from one another, even though there's so much that's similar. And then obviously, a bit more mundane answer. I really like the combat system. I just think it's really well designed and so on. It's just like there's weight, there's heft to it. It's also relatively simple, but it's also very flexible. It's not quite as flashy as a Devil May Cry, for instance, but it's not meant to be flashy in that sense. It's more about the cumulative effect of doing some clever dodges and so on and so forth. It's not meant to be. I mean, it's made to be more brutal than anything else, and I like that a whole lot. As opposed to something like a God of War or something that's all about the flash, but you can basically use the same two attacks over and over again and beat the whole game. Whereas in this game, it's just extremely unlikely. I think I read in an interview that the From Software guy said, you will learn the systems of our game, or the game is going to punish you. Like really, really punish you, and I think they really stay true to that. So, yeah, that's it. I think that's what I'd answer. At least today, I'll think more about the question and see if there's something else that comes up. But I think throughout the course of the series, you'll also see more specific examples of what I think works well and what doesn't work so well. So yeah, I guess that's it. It's been a longish stream, and it's Saturday night, and I appreciate those of you who've logged in. I was thinking of doing only weekdays, but I didn't get around to doing any streaming yesterday. Please, follow the channel, and also look for Game Designer Plays on YouTube, because that's where I keep all my VODs, and then I try to structure the whole thing a little bit more after the fact with, topics and links and stuff like that, so you can actually have like an interactive table of contents. So yeah, look for Game Designer Plays on YouTube. Also, I still think my old episodes are archived here on Twitch, but let's face it, nobody really watches VODs on Twitch. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess see you guys next time, and please subscribe both to the live stream at Twitch and also the YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for next episode, obviously YouTube's the place to share those. So just write in the comments there, and yeah, thanks a bunch. Yeah, before I leave, fatal exception. Yeah, right. Set times would be nice so we don't miss the next ones. Yeah, if you want to do real time, yeah, obviously that would be best. I mean, I'm going to try to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to try to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and probably around 8 or 9 CEST. So that's Central European Standard Time or summertime. So that's, Stockholm and I guess Berlin and a few other capitals. Basically, most of the most interesting places in Europe. And if, I happen to have people watching from the United States, you should probably all be at work. So I really appreciate that you're not and you're staying home watching my stuff. Yeah, okay. Thanks a bunch, and I will see you guys next time, I hope.